Hi, this is Gina Versa, Waffle Press podcast, and we have a very special episode today. First off, I have my co-host Diego Crespo.
Hello, thanks for having me on our podcast.
Yes, yeah, this is a great podcast. And we have a special guest with us from Legion M, Jeff Anison. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you guys so much for having me on the show.
Oh, and yeah, Jeff, thank you for joining us. Seeing Legion M, I remember watching Colossal and seeing some of the information on the crowdfunding on that, and I got to meet Rob from Legion M at San Luis LA Comic Con, and we were talking and just telling him about the podcast, and he was giving me a little information, and yeah, he recommended that you be on. So it's great to have you join us this evening.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that you met us with Colossal. That was our very first project, and it occupies a very special place in my heart and in the history and lore of the Legion.
Yeah. And just going off of that, Jeff, can you tell us and the listeners a little bit about starting the organization? I believe you started it in 2016.
Yeah, we started it. We launched in I think it was March. The company was founded in March of 2016, and we're the world's first fan-owned entertainment company. And what that means is we're an entertainment company. Sometimes, typically, we act like a production company or maybe a film financier in some cases, conceivably like a studio at some point. But we invest, develop, produce movies and TV shows and virtual reality. And what makes us really different is that unlike most entertainment content, which is funded by Wall Street investors or wealthy individuals, we get our money source is the fans. We are literally owned by fans. It's kind of like if you took everybody at Comic-Con, and actually, we're getting bigger now, so we're a bigger and bigger Comic-Con, and we all kind of pooled our money and said, hey, let's make a entertainment company of our own. And the idea behind it is, if you've got an entertainment company that is owned by fans, when your movie comes out or your TV show is about to release, you've got a huge competitive advantage because you've got a baked in audience that is going to be paying attention, and that they're going to come out opening night and see it, and they're going to bring their friends. They're going to be talking about it on social media because it's their movie or it's their TV show. And so back in March of 2016, this was just kind of an idea. There were some laws that changed. The Jobs Act that was implemented in 2016, and that's what kind of precipitated the whole thing. But we launched it almost 3 years ago, and it was just kind of an idea. And today, we've grown it. We've got over 15,000 investors. We've got over 75,000 people in our community, and we've had the opportunity to work on projects with people like Anne Hathaway and Nicolas Cage and Kevin Smith and Stan Lee. And so we're very excited about where it's headed.
Definitely, yeah, and it's been really great to see it grow as well. The Mandy, which you invested in last year, just seemed to take the world by storm as well, and got the Legion M name out there as well.
Yeah, no, that was a huge one for us, and it's funny that whole movie is, I mean, it's such a unique movie.
His fist closed around the serpent's eye. Strange and eternal.
I need you to get me that girl I saw. You know what to do.
I think it's such a special movie, it really has been fantastic, and we were very fortunate to invest in that project very early on, and it's something that we like. We actually created a new brand for it, which was Legion Midnight. And the reason is because it is a very unique movie, and it's not a movie for everybody, and we acknowledge that. But one of the cool things about having a company that's owned by fans is that we believe it gives us a lot more leeway to work with creators and allow them to go outside of the box a little bit. If you look at the Hollywood today, this, all the content that the studios produce, it tends to be very risk averse, right? It's all based on existing IP. There are these massive movies with these massive stars. And, when a movie like Mandy comes along, which is completely different and really kind of breaks the mold of a lot of things, I think that that's a much more challenging film for traditional Hollywood to accept and to make. And the folks over at SpectraVision, I mean, it's their project, and they were the producers of the whole thing, and we were lucky enough to get involved with them, and they brought us into the movie. But we love the idea of working with up and coming creators like Panos Cosmatos to go outside the box and experiment a little bit and do fringe and make midnight movies, because that's what helps propel the art forward.
Yeah, and movies like Mandy are really hard to come by now as well. I mean, you have a lot of independent film, and you have a lot of movies where they're crowdfunded, but they're not as crazy as Mandy. I will say that.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a risk, and we knew that we were taking a risk with Mandy. And I mean, we were very fortunate, and Panos is very talented, and the risk paid off. But I mean, it's not necessarily an easy decision, because every movie, like every production, everybody starts off with the intent of making an amazing movie, but by default, it doesn't always work out, right? I mean, you can just see, I mean, by definition, I should say, not by default, but by definition, only 10% or 15%, go on to become great movies. And, probably more than half turn out to be mediocre movies or worse. And so, when we saw the script and we saw Panos's first work, Beyond the Black Rainbow, we saw, we knew that Nicolas Cage was attached and that Johan Johansson was going to do the soundtrack. And we thought, there's the right mix of chemistry here. And so, if we get lucky, it'll work out. And, but I got to tell you, like, it can be unnerving. The first time that we saw the film was at Sundance when it premiered. And that's really the first time anybody saw the movie, because they actually flew, they were working on it up to the last minute. Wow. And they flew it from an editing bay in Belgium and met the projectionist for Sundance in a Starbucks parking lot in Park City so they could hand over the DCP so they could show it that night. And so if you think about it like that, there's a movie that represented years of Panos's life. He wrote it, he ate and dreamt and slept it and breathed it. All of the hundreds or thousands of people that were involved and that worked in it, all of the investors and financiers and the production company, Elijah Wood's SpectraVision, and all that. And, it all comes down to this one moment where the movie plays on the big screen for the first time. And, the rubber meets the road and the audience sees it. And, at the end, hopefully they like it. And, we were very fortunate, but it's a truly unique scenario. If you ever go to Sundance, or if you go to, Cannes Film Festival, or one of these big markets where things are premiering, it is such an amazing thing, because, that moment, that 90 minutes in a darkened theater is what, makes or breaks the last 4 years of somebody's life. And it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at Cannes, there's been a lot of booing as well. So it's
I know. Well, yeah, and that's kind of the scary thing. And I think that's why, it takes a special class of person as a creator to be able to put themselves out, so far. I mean, we invested, and it was a risk for us. But I mean, for us, it was a relatively small risk. Like, we don't have a ton of money in it. It was a very important movie for us because as a new emerging company, I think a lot of people look at the movies that we've done, and because we've only done a handful so far, like they take a very large significance, because people want to judge you and they want to evaluate based on the work that you've done. And so, it was a pretty big risk for us, because had that movie been terrible and had everybody hated it, and this was the third movie that we had come out, as Legion M, like, that would make things much more difficult for us to convince us that, hey, yeah, you should come along for the ride. But thankfully it went the other way. And, hats off to Panos, and hats off to the Spectrovision team. And frankly, any director, writer, creator, that goes out and puts themselves that far out there to risk, being booed for everything that all the heart and soul that you've put into something for, 4 years or 6 years is incredible.
Oh, exactly. And just going off of that, where you talked about risk, you said that, as a company, you try to make films that are unique, that are not seen before. How, as the the founder of Legion M, co-founder, how does that? Do you ever feel like, how does it work as a business model? Do you ever find it difficult to this idea of these crazy ideas, to get them like heard and seen?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think if you look at Hollywood today, like I said, look at the box office for 2019 or 2018. And what you'll see is that, most of the top 10 or most of the top 20 movies are franchises, right? It's Marvel movies, it's Star Wars, it's, Fast and Furious 12, and, all of these amazing franchises. And, there's a lot of really, truly amazing franchises right now. I mean, the work that Marvel is doing is absolutely incredible. But, if you go back 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. If you go back 20 years ago, and look at the top 20 box office, it was mostly original stories. And the reason that is because, Hollywood at the end of the day is a business. Most people, like, we think of Hollywood like the art side of it, but at the end of the day, it's a business. And for a studio that's putting tens of millions of dollars, I mean, a major motion picture is going to cost you, typically tens of $millions. There's some examples that break the rule in independent film, but if you're going to put that much money at stake, you need to feel confident that you're going to be able to get it back. And the formula that the studios have evolved to today that works, the surest way that you can make money in Hollywood, is you start with an established franchise, because you know that there's a baked-in fan base. You make a big movie and you put massive stars in it, because every one of those stars has a fan base and they're going to turn out to see it. And then you spend hundreds of millions of dollars, oftentimes almost as much as it took to make the movie, to market the movie worldwide, so everybody in the world knows what it is. And incidentally, it's got to be a movie that works worldwide, because today America is no longer the largest movie audience in the world. It's China. And so that's why action movies, you see so many of them, because that translates. That same movie, an action sequence, works in France, and it works in China, and it works in India, and it can work all over the world. Whereas comedy is very difficult, because cultures have very different senses of humor. And so anyway, so that's the model that they've come up that works. And I've heard, big name directors say it's more risky for a studio to invest $20 million into a project that's an original story than it is for them to invest $100 million in, a massive summer tentpole. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether Fast and Furious 17 is good or bad. There's a core audience that's going to come out and see it no matter what. So that's kind of what makes Hollywood, that's the model as it is today. What's really interesting about Legion M is that we have a large audience as well that is invested in us. but they're invested in the company, like they're part owners of the company, and so they're, in a sense, paying attention, and they're invested, they're emotionally invested in all the projects that we do. And, right now, like I said, we're only 3 years old. We've got about 75,000 people in our community, and we've got about 15,000 investors who've actually invested and own a piece of the company. Our long-term goal, if you look at our logo, it's an M with a bar over it, which is the Roman numeral for 1 million. And that's because our long-term goal for the company is to have 1 million fans as shareholders of the company. And we believe that if we could achieve that, right now the typical investor is putting in maybe $400 or $500. So if we could achieve 1 million investors, we'd have $400 to $500 million. We have hundreds of millions of dollars to develop these projects. And more importantly, we'd have 1 million people standing behind them when they come out. And we believe that that is the potential recipe for a company that could be one of the most influential companies in Hollywood. And unlike traditional Hollywood, has the latitude to go outside the box and to back original stories, because our fan base is going to turn out. We want to not just service an old franchise. We want to create a new franchise, and create new IP. I mean, it's amazing. We were talking to Dean Devlin. We did a project with Dean Devlin, who was the creator of Stargate and Independence Day with Will Smith. As well as Leverage and The Librarians. I mean, this is a guy who's created franchises, and he'll straight up he'd say, in today's world, Star Wars would never get made. Indiana Jones would never get made. They might take the story, the original story from Star Wars, and theme it with something that already exists out there. When he did Independence Day, the studios, I think, told him that, well, yeah, this would be great, but we can't try and do Independence Day. We got to make it War of the Worlds, right? You have to tie it to something that already exists. And so anyway, so we think that for so many reasons, a company owned by fans just makes sense. And we believe that it gives us these huge competitive advantages compared to a company that's owned by Wall Street or corporate investors and is just, solely run by dollars and cents.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I heard that Dean was a really big Star Wars fan, and no, that's Star Wars original property as well. I mean, imagine it in the 2000s where you have such discourse as well on fandom. I would think it would be I don't know how well it received as well.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And, again, I love the franchise. I went and saw Captain Marvel last night, and I
really
absolutely loved it. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I mean, I grew up with Star Wars. I saw, what was kind of an interesting case study was Alita Battle Angel when it came out a couple of years ago.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that movie. It actually kind of flopped in the U.S., but fortunately, China and Asia saved it. So I feel very confident that there's going to be a sequel to that, which is clearly intended to be a franchise, and it's already an existing franchise. But I think that movie is going to be back because of the success that it has in Asia. But again, I mean, you're talking about James Cameron here.
Exactly.
And trying to launch this new property, and it's so difficult today to do it, just because there's so many different options for things for you to watch. There's so few reasons to get up off of your couch and go into the theaters as opposed to just watch something on Netflix.
I'm really curious. I know getting a little off topic, but what is your take on Alita and just kind of the how it got marketed and how it was as a movie?
So I loved it as a movie. I truly enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I loved the story. I thought it was really strong and powerful. I mean, visually, obviously, it's stunning.
Jeff, welcome to the Waffle Press. I think we are the biggest Alita fans in the world.
Yeah, he saw it 4 times.
I earned my waffles this morning.
Yes, you did.
That's fantastic. Now, I have to say, I knew nothing about the series going in. Like, I've never read the
manga.
The manga comic books. And all I saw, the very first trailer that I saw, I'm like, oh my God, this looks terrible. Like this freaky big eyes. Like, and I didn't understand it. And I thought, okay, this looks like a dud. And then the second trailer came out, the full trailer that told a little bit more of the story. And I thought, wow, this could really be something. And when it came out, like I actually made an effort to go see that movie just because I really wanted to see it. I wanted to see it in theaters. I saw it myself, because I didn't have anybody who was going with me.
Okay.
I couldn't talk my daughters into go seeing it. I have kids, and I took one of them to see Captain Marvel, and she was all over that.
Awesome.
Like, oh, let's go see this Alita Battle Angel. Like, I don't know, I don't really get it. So, but yeah, I actually I really loved it, and I look forward to seeing more of that world.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, this film that took like Cameron like 20 years to make.
Oh, did it really? I don't even know the story behind it. Was it a 20-year process for him to get it made?
Well, in like a 20-year process where it's like he found like I believe Del Toro showed him the Magna in the 90s. He got really interested. He wrote like 3 or 4 versions of the script with various screenwriters. And I think like 2005 or sometime in the 2000s, he's developing it, and he's also developing Avatar. And he had to choose between the two, and he chose Avatar. And maybe a couple years ago, he was still interested in making it. And, of course, he's still doing Avatars as well.
Yes.
So he handed it off to the great Robert Rodriguez, and he just, took to it like water or fish to water. So
yeah,
I love Rodriguez too, and Diego's a big fan of Robert Rodriguez as well.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was funny. I didn't know too much about this movie. Like, I didn't even realize that it was Robert Rodriguez. When I saw the credits, I'm like, wait a second, the El Mariachi guy? Like that's really impressive. Like if you just look, because like I'm old enough to remember when El Mariachi came out. And, like it's like, oh, look at this, aspiring young Mexican director that, made this movie for $50 and, turned it into a hit. But he's remarkable as well. And I love, obviously, Guillermo del Toro. He's actually, he was another very early meeting that we had with the Legion.
Really?
We were fortunate enough, and again, this was just random circumstances, and we knew somebody that knew somebody. And we went to the Bleak House and got a chance to spend like an hour and a half with him. We flew down on like a Sunday because he had an opportunity. And we're like, yeah, no problem. And but he was very supportive of what we're doing, and he loved the idea of a fan-owned company. And again, it's just that's actually one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize is that. One of the advantages that I think that we've got, one of our superpowers, is because we're owned by fans. When we talk to somebody like a Stan Lee or a Guillermo del Toro, we're not coming to them as, hey, we're some corporate conglomerate. We want to do this project with you to make a bunch of money. We're literally saying, we are a group of your fans that have pooled our money together, and we want to do something with you. And you would be amazed at how many doors that opens. And particularly for people like Guillermo and Stan, the people that have enough money, and frankly, they can do whatever they want to. There's no shortage of people that wanted to work with Stan when he was alive. And Stan could literally just choose whatever project he wanted to get involved with. But when you come as a group of fans united, that's something that most creators that we've met with today really resonates with them. And so it's the bigger we get, kind of, the more powerful that lever becomes. And we're excited to see where we take it from here.
Oh, of course. And going off of that, let's talk a little bit about crowdfunding, because I just find it like so fascinating, where in the business model as well of having fans like almost have like a piece of like a film that they're contributing to, where they have a say, they have a voice. From when Kickstarter first debuted, like these couple years ago, what was the process of using crowdfunding to just make fans involved?
It's the whole basis of our company. And, like I said at the very outset, we, bill ourselves as the world's first fan-owned company. And what makes it possible are these new laws that for the first time allow fans to not just back a project, right? Kickstarter's been around. I love Kickstarter. In fact, actually, we're about to launch a Kickstarter that I'll be able to talk about when we talk about Girl with No Name. But we're huge fans of Kickstarter, but I mean, Kickstarter is a donation-based platform, which means that you can back a project and you can get a t-shirt or you can get your name in the credits or something like that. But at the end of the day, you don't own a financial stake in that project. And so as amazing as Kickstarter is, we feel like equity crowdfunding, which for the first time allows you to actually invest and own a stake in that project. So if that project is successful, you can actually make money from it. We think that kind of, it turns it up to like 11 because it's just so much more holistic to be able to go out to fans and say, not just, we want you to support us to make this dream come true, but to say, we want you to truly be a part of it. And if you help us make this dream come true and it's, financially successful, like you're a part of it, not just in an honorary sort of way, like you were one of our early backers, but you actually have shares in the company that could become extremely valuable. And so, Paul and I come from a startup world. This is the third company that the two of us have co-founded. The first one was really successful. We started that when there were three of us. There was one other co-founder. And we started that one working out of a spare room in one of the guys' house. And, there were three of us and we had no money and we had no product. And, in kind of a typical Silicon Valley, story, we did one thing and completely failed, and then we did something else and completely failed and did something else and completely failed, and then we did something that took off like a rocket, and we were the first ones in the world to put live television on a cell phone back in 2003. And suddenly the company skyrocketed and we won an Emmy Award for innovation in television. And we went from, like I said, three people working out of a spare room to a worldwide company with 400 employees and offices around the world. And we were the world leader in television outside of the home back in 2003. And again, if you put yourself back in 2003, the only place that you watched television was on a television. There was no such thing as streaming video. There was no YouTube. There was no, or actually YouTube might have been in the very, very first inception.
Like a proto YouTube.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and at that time it was cat videos and stuff like that. Like we actually talked with YouTube, and it's kind of a funny story, but we actually had some kind of like, I don't know what you call it, lightweight acquisition discussions with YouTube. Like we talked with the guys about potentially buying it, and I mean, we were a pretty small company at the time. We had launched Moby TV when that happened. And so, we had a lot of momentum, but, it was, I don't know, it was like a year later, they got bought for Google by, for like $10 billion or whatever the amount was. It was crazy. But yeah, so back in those days, and anyway, so we've been on this kind of startup roller coaster before. The second company that we founded, it went nowhere. I mean, it was in business for 8 years. We did some really amazing things. We generated some revenue, some great products, but it never kind of hit that inflection point that allowed it to take off. And so that one was winding down around 2016 when, Paul and I kind of started to envision Legion M. And so anyway, but the whole point of it is that, just this idea of being a part of a startup and, being a part of a startup is, again, it's a little bit like the Sundance people. Like we're putting ourselves out there. Like we have no idea how this story is going to end. We're risking our jobs and our careers and our reputations, because we believe so much that this idea of a fan-owned company has the potential to change the world. And I think that the ability to bring other people, to bring fans into that process and to, particularly because our startup is focused on Hollywood and this idea of opening the gates of Hollywood and allowing people to come in is so powerful, and it's so rewarding. And like I said, it's so, it's such a virtuous cycle, because the way that we look at it, we try and get you as much backstage access as we can to our projects. We're doing a Kevin Smith project, the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and we got some set visits that we just raffled off to our investors,
Nice.
free of charge. If you want, you could come and spend a day on the set with Kevin Smith. We're about to announce a project, and I can't talk about it today, but we're about to announce a project. We're going to have premiere tickets, the red carpet premieres that are usually reserved for VIPs and industry insiders. And so, we're giving up all of our tickets, and we're getting a bunch more so that we can bring a whole bunch of just regular fans, to be a part of this Hollywood premiere. And, we do a lot of stuff online, like we want to take you behind the scenes. We want to give you set visits. We want to let you talk with the directors. After Bad Samaritan launched, we had an online shindig, and you could get on and ask questions to Dean Devlin about the making of the film. And what's great about it is that is rewarding to all of our shareholders, right? Because they're cool perks. But from a business standpoint, it's really smart, because the more excited you are about, for example, the Jay and Silent Bob reboot that we're doing with Kevin Smith, the more likely that you are to talk about it online and tell your friends and generate the sort of grassroots buzz, frankly, that a studio would kill for, but money can't buy. And so, it's like the more we give back to the fans, the more the fans are excited about the project, the more likely the project is to be successful, which means that financially there's more money coming back to Legion M, which means that it makes the fans even, they get to participate in that because they're owners of the company. And so it truly is a virtuous circle. And so I can't say enough about it. People look at equity crowdfunding. It's brand new. It's only been around for a couple of years. And some people look at it, particularly in the finance community, is like, oh, this is just another way to raise money. And to us, it's way more than that. This is not a way for us to raise money. This is the foundation of a model that we think has the potential to revolutionize the movie industry.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's, just so so interesting. Just seeing what's, what the next film you guys will bring to the general public. And, it's been so interesting with Colossal, with Mandy. And yeah, I'm really excited to, check out The Girl with No Name, to see The Field Guide of Evil, which, just anthology horror is our jam, me and Diego. So.
Oh, is it really? Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah,
that's
perfect. I think we need significantly more of it, because that gives directors and creators a real opportunity to kind of tell small stories, but very. I personally find that horror is one of the more creative genres. That's where directors really get to sharpen their teeth in a big way. Like something like Mandy might not be full on horror, but there's some very shocking imagery, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah.
Well, let's go off of that, just to change gears here. Let's segue into let's talk a little bit about Mandy, if that's okay with you, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really love to hear about maybe Nicolas Cage being able to go full Cage, because I mean we're talking about fans, and Nicolas Cage is also not just one of our great actors, but a big fanboy. He named his son Kal-El.
Yeah.
He's got a big old nerdy heart like the rest of us, and I'm wondering what your experience was like meeting him.
It's funny. He is a funny guy. He is unto himself. He's got this. I've met a lot of celebrities through Legion M, but Nick Cage is one of those guys that just lives up to all the hype. He is crazy. I think his real life persona and again, like, I don't know if at the end of the day, when it's him and his family and friends, alone in their hotel room, if that's him, or if this is some extension of kind of his persona. But I mean, he is absolutely larger than life. It's like it's totally surreal when you're with him, because he's talking to you and you're like, holy shit, like, it's Nick Cage. Because it's not like,
Yeah.
you see some actors and they're totally different in real life than the characters they portray. I just watched Idris Elba on Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
And, like, I know him from The Wire, right?
Yeah.
And, you see him and he's got, his crazy British accent, and like, it's just like surreal. But like Nick Cage, it's like you feel like you're in a scene with Nick Cage, because he talks exactly the same. He's got that intensity when he looks at you, and with what he does. But yeah, he's we had a lot of fun with Mandy, because, and it was a very special project. I think I mentioned this earlier, but we got involved very early in the process. We got a version of the script when it was in the script stage. Nicolas Cage was already attached, so we already knew that. They hadn't shot anything on it. And, like I said, we read the script and we thought, wow, this is a wild, crazy script. And we saw Panos's first movie, Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Yeah, amazing,
and thought,
amazing film.
This guy has such an amazing visual style. And I mean, if I'm being completely honest, like, Beyond the Black Rainbow is a little bit slow for me. But visually, it is incredible. And we thought, my gosh, if you could take that sort of visual style and marry it with a plot that's got more action and has a Nicolas Cage in it, like, it could be something that was truly special. And so, we decided to get involved. And, so like I said, we went through the whole process, and it takes a long time, the whole process. I mean, it was nearly a year, I think. And then we found out that it got accepted to Sundance, and we're like, holy cow, that's incredible. I mean, getting accepted to Sundance they say statistically it's easier to get accepted to Harvard than it is to get accepted to Sundance, because it's extremely competitive. And so when the film got accepted, not just accepted, but it actually opened the midnight movie section. We're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so, we went to Sundance, Legion M did, and we had a Legion M lounge that was available for all of our shareholders to come hang out. And we had Leonard Maltin doing celebrity interviews, and we were live streaming. And, it was part of the press junket, so all the filmmakers would come by and they'd do their little 15-minute interview with Leonard Maltin, and we'd stream it to the internet, and then the next one would come. And this lounge, was open to anybody. So, I mean, you still have to obviously pay your way to Sundance. We can't pay your way for that. But, for so many people, the opportunity to go to Sundance, which is kind of like a bucket list item for a lot of folks, and to not just like go and buy tickets and go to movies, but actually have like this Legion M lounge, where you've got a place to hang out, you've got a place to mingle with other members of the Legion M community, was really special. And so, we had that going on. So we had a lot of Legion M people who were there. The premiere was, Friday night. It was the very first movie opening the midnight section. And then we had like an after party. And we actually, it was just before the premiere, and we were doing a live stream with Spectravision. So Spectravision was the production company. We invested through Spectravision, but that's Elijah Wood's company. So it's Elijah Wood and Lisa Whalen and Daniel Noah. And anyway, and those guys are absolutely incredible, and we loved working with them. And so we were doing, again, like kind of like what I was saying, like, let's spend an hour doing a live stream, with the producers of Mandy, and the people, the Legion M people in the audience could ask questions, and we had people online submitting questions, and all day there, we were trying to get Nicolas Cage to come by. We're like, oh my God, how epic would it be if Nicolas Cage could, show up and like crash this live stream? And, but it's impossible because it's Nicolas Cage, right? He's going to do what he wants to do, right? And so, someone's like, oh, I think we're going to be able to get him. And then but it's just like, you just never know, and lo and behold, about 3/4 of the way through, there's this kind of sudden rustling and there's this hushed, excitement. And we've got, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 Legion M people in the audience. And we're watching this live stream with Elijah Wood, which is, I mean, that in and of itself is really cool to be talking to the producers and talking to Elijah Wood. But, and lo and behold, it's Nicolas Cage, and they make their way up to the front, and he's got this. I just see her from the back. It's like this woman with like this luxurious fur coat and this long flowing blonde hair, and I'm like, oh, this must be like his girlfriend or, his friend or something like that, and. It turns around and it turns out it's not a woman. It's Vince Neil, the frontman from Motley Crue. And,
wow.
Again, you got to, this is Sundance. So everybody's wearing these, bulky clothes and you can't tell anybody from behind what they were, but this luxurious fur coat and the blonde hair. And so Nicolas Cage crashed our live stream with Vince Neil from Motley Crue. And
oh my God.
And
that's amazing.
and joined in the interview, and he was there at the party later, and he was there at the Q&A, and it made for such like an exciting time because it's so fun to be involved like from the get-go, right? Like the people that were part of Legion M, like we were following this like even before it got accepted to Sundance, and to go on to do that, and then it premiered at Sundance, and not only it was the best reviewed film at Sundance. It left Sundance with 100% Rotten Tomatoes rating. And then it went to Cannes and got a 5-minute standing ovation at Cannes. And then it premiered. And like you said, it kind of set the world on fire. And, we had a premiere party, for the premiere of Mandy that, again, was open to the Legion. You had to buy a ticket. Like we couldn't, we can't. You're not investing in a company, so we can throw parties for our investors. But, where a party like that, after party after the premiere in Hollywood is a sort of thing that, I mean, those are extremely common, and they're VIP only. That's just the way the industry works. But when Legion M's involved, we're like, no, well, let's let some fans in, and let's help pay for it. So we actually expanded the after party, and so that we could accommodate fans. And the way that we paid for it was we sold tickets, and we sell sponsorships and all that sort of stuff. So it was pretty epic, and just to be involved from day one with such a, like I said, it's such a special movie, and the fact that there's still like midnight showings of that movie going on around the country, I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. One last question for you before we go to the next topic. On I believe the at the LA Comic Con, keeps changing its name. You had some my bad. Some props. You had Cheddar Goblin, and I'm not. To clarify, do you will we see any merchandising for Cheddar Goblin? You have
Actually, if you go to legionm.com, it's relatively new because we just got approval there were a couple designs that, it's funny, before the movie came out, Panos and the directors were a little bit leery of leaning into Cheddar Goblin too hard because they were afraid that it might kind of like, I don't know, make the whole thing just seem kind of gimmicky or kind of silly. Now that the movie is out and it's kind of established itself, and Cheddar Goblin has like a huge following on Twitter, and so we sold limited edition Cheddar Goblin masks that were literally made by the effects company that created the actual Cheddar Goblin. They created 50 hand numbered, autographed masks of the Cheddar Goblin, awesome. For Halloween that we sold. We've got a couple T-shirts that are available now, and this is kind of like fan art that Panos saw online and said, I really like this. And we thought, well, hey, let's make a T-shirt. And so we reached out to the people that had created it, and, they get a cut of the proceeds. And, so those are for sale. We've got a ton of great stuff, including my favorite is we have the tiger shirt that Nicolas Cage wears in the movie, which was an original design for the movie. And there's actually kind of a funny story there. It was the original prop was made from a Texas A&M shirt. And, what they had done was they had covered up the, Texas A&M logo, or sorry, not Texas A&M, just Texas. It's kind of that burnt orange, and put the tiger print on top of it. And so it was hell for us to try and find a manufacturer that could manufacture that color orange shirt, the sleeves on it, because that's not like a standard color. And so like it was actually a lot of work, but we found the guys. And so we have that shirt, which is incredible, and it's got glow in the dark ink, so like the eyes like glow in the dark, and it's
Awesome.
really kick ass. But if you pay a little bit extra, you can get the Rage pack, which comes with a pair of tidy whities, tube socks, and an empty vodka bottle that has, again, Panos created the brand for the vodka in that scene. It's Diamond Dagger vodka, and so it's a screen accurate reproduction of the vodka bottle, so that you can have your own full rage meltdown in a bathroom with a bottle of vodka. It's really cool.
Oh my god, that's delightful. I'll put links down to that stuff below, because I feel like the world just needs more of that.
Yeah,
to be
definitely.
honest.
And that scene, I got to tell you, I mean, that scene I think is going to go in Nicolas Cage's reel as far as his greatest scenes ever, because like it is so powerful, and it's it's full on. It's like Nick Cage playing Nick Cage, turned up to like Nick Cage. It's like it's absolutely incredible. But it's also so powerful, and it's not just like crazy for the sake of being crazy. I mean, it's amazing, and particularly when you watch it in context of that of the movie and everything that happens kind of leading up to that point. That's right after obviously what happens to Mandy happens, and then you see this totally bizarre Cheddar Goblin commercial, and then like at that point, like you are just ready for a release, and that's what Nick Cage gives us, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's an incredible scene. It really marries the rage Cage that everyone kind of knows and loves, but also I think people forget like the award-winning actor, like genuinely powerful performer that Nicolas Cage is. Also, like I think that's often overlooked, and I hope we see more of that in the future. He was also very good in Spider-Verse. But looking forward to the future, I would also like to bring back up your projects that you have going forward. I'm really interested in the horror anthology stories, the Field Guide to Evil. I don't know how much you can say about that yet.
Yeah, no. So that movie, that was actually one of our very first investments. We made that investment like 2 years ago, and it's a very special project. So what they did is, they went out to 8, up and coming but award-winning directors. So the best of the best kind of up and coming directors around the world. And each one of them, there's 8 segments, and they're each like, I don't know, 15 minutes long. And each one of them is exploring a piece of a myth or dark folklore from their home country. And so it truly is international. One of the segments is from the United States, but there's one from India. I think there's one from Poland. I think there's one from like Brazil. I mean, they're literally all over the globe. And a lot of them are, even foreign language. They're like subtitled, and so they're shot in their native language. And, the idea is it's kind of like we were talking about how action translates international. It's the same thing with horror. I mean, fear is kind of a universal language. And I think that the opportunity to allow these, emerging visionaries to spend a little time, and like you said earlier, cut their teeth maybe on a piece of local mythology is absolutely fantastic. It's fascinating. So that movie is going to be coming out soon. It comes out, I want to say March 29th, which is in a couple weeks. It's going to be in a handful of theaters. It's a day and date release. So I think it's going to be in like 40 or 50 different theaters around the country. Pretty much all the Alamo Draft Houses, I think, will have it. And then there's a number of other like independent cinemas that'll have it. But it's also on demand at the same time. And so we're going to be promoting that. If you happen to live near a theater, you can go to a Legion of Meetup. and we've worked with Alamo to create a set of very cool limited edition pins. That site will probably be going live. Well, it should be live by the time that this airs in a day or two. So you can just go to legionm.com. I think it's actually legionm.com/evil. And you can get the details about how you can come either to an opening night meetup and get a pin, or if it's not playing at a theater near you, it will be on demand. And so, we're trying to work out a system so that if you can't make it to a theater, but you can rent the movie or buy the movie on demand, there's a way for you to get one of these pins. You'll have to just pay the shipping and handling charges. And we've created a cool viewing party kit. So if you want to watch it and invite some friends over, we put together this little kit that's got some cool, it's got some little posters from the movie. It's got some little fun special things to kind of set the mood. It's got a little booklet that has drink recipes, cocktail recipes from the different directors. So if you want to do some special drinks and snacks and all that sort of stuff, as well as we usually put information from the movie and some little tidbits here and there. And so we're really excited about this one. It's actually kind of fun because it's 8 different segments. It lends itself to a lot of discussion, because when I watch it, I'm like, okay, well, there were these 3 that I absolutely loved, and then these are ones that I didn't really care for, I didn't understand or whatever. And so it's really interesting, I think, afterwards to contrast and compare and talk with other people and find out what they saw, and just, kind of appreciate the film and make it a little bit more than just, a digital experience. I mean, it's funny. We live in this day and age. We're completely surrounded by digital media. The media is everywhere. It's on our phones. It's on our, on our computers, and you can't, it's always there. But I think it's always so special when you can kind of add community to that and make it more than just watching a movie, but make it more no, let's get together with friends and make an event out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also on your docket is the Girl with No Name, which I also know very little about, and if there's anything you could shine on about that.
Yeah, Girl with No Name is Field Guide to Evil, Mandy, the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, Colossal. These were all other people's projects that we invested in after they were already, kind of in production or about to be in production. Girl with No Name is kind of the other half of our slate, which are projects that we're developing. And this one's really cool. So it's it's the best way to think of it. It's set in the Old West. It's a female protagonist. The way to kind of think of it is, if you're familiar with True Grit, that sort of storyline. The difference is, where a young girl's, parents are murdered and she sets out to get vengeance. The difference is that whereas in True Grit, the girl hooks up with, some badass cowboys, the girl is kind of the badass. She's like a Katniss Everdeen sort of character that goes out to seek revenge to avenge her family. And it's a really cool script. It won Slam Dance a few years ago. And we've got a great director that's attached to it and producer. And what we wanted to do, I mean, it's really difficult to get a Western produced in Hollywood, and, especially a female driven Western. It's a lot easier now than it was a couple of years ago. But one of the things that we thought that we could do, a way that we could use the Legion, was to engage them with the process by creating a comic book. So we went out to some amazing female comic book artists, and we basically produced a comic book that, covers kind of a important sequence in the movie script of the film. It's not the whole film. It kind of takes place in the early middle stages of it. But it tells the story of, Girl with No Name and one of her very first encounters. And what's really cool about it is 2 things. Like I said, so we're launching on Kickstarter. We're launching the comic book. We've already actually made the comic book. We're just using Kickstarter for the pre-sales because it's a really cool way to put together these packages. It's a cool way. Like, we love the Kickstarter community. It's a wonderful community. And what we're using the comic book for is two things. First of all, we want to see if we can get some grassroots momentum for Girl with No Name. Because if we walk into a studio and you've got a script versus you've got a script and you've got a comic book that is already showing that it's got a fan base and that people like it, that significantly improves your odds of being able to, sell your movie or, get the talent attached that you need to take it to the next stage. But the other part of it is that this, the style, like, it takes place in the Old West, but the director's style, what really sold us on this is that she's got this vision to make it not feel like your grandfather's Western, but feel more like, 300. Or maybe Sin City. Sin City is kind of like on the far end of like heavily stylized. But if you think of like 300 or oh gosh, what's that spy movie? Kingsman. Where it's this bright colors and this highly stylized sort of thing, so that it doesn't feel like a dusty old Western. It feels like an action movie, a stylized action movie that happens to be set in the Old West. And what better way to flesh out the visual style than using a comic book? So what we're doing is we're releasing this comic book. We've got like different variant covers that have kind of different artistic styles. And when you if you choose to buy one of these comic books, you're buying more than just the comic book. You're actually getting involved in the process. And so after the Kickstarter is done, we're going to be doing like online development meetings with the director and the producer. We haven't cast the movie yet, so we're going to go out to all of these people for casting suggestions. We want to hear your feedback on, like, what do you think of this visual style? What do you think of these different options that we gave you for visual styles? What suggestions do you have? And so it's really like this kind of unheard of opportunity to be involved with the development of something very early in the process. And, this is our first time doing something like this. It's our first time doing a comic book, but we really love the whole process. It's so powerful and so valuable for the director to be able to get that sort of feedback and that engagement early on, that if it works out, we'd love to do this, frankly, with more of our development projects.
Well, you definitely got me and Gene excited. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, we will do everything we can to put the good word out there. And last thing before we wrap up, because we're running out of time, what can you say about the Jay and Silent Bob reboot?
Kevin Smith is awesome. We've had the pleasure of working with Kevin Smith on a number of projects with Stan Lee. We did a virtual reality shoot inside of Stan's home with him about 1.5 years before he passed away. That is really special. It's literally Kevin Smith spending 1.5 hours talking with Stan in virtual reality, asking Stan, about his life, everything from the creation of Spider-Man and running Marvel through the golden age of comics, up to the deeper questions like, what was the hardest day of your life and how did you get through it? And what we ended up with was some amazing, footage that we're in the process right now of post-production and figuring out how we're going to release and all that sort of stuff. But, we worked with Kevin on that project, and then we did the Stan Lee handprint ceremony with Kevin. And so we've just kind of gradually been getting closer and closer. And when we heard that he was doing a Jay and Silent Bob reboot, we're like, yeah, just, where do we sign up? And so that's one where we invested like literally even before it went into production. We were one of the first investors in it. It's still, a minority stake. It's not like we're financing the film. We're not big enough to do that by ourselves yet, but we're working very closely with Kevin. We put out the word that, for extras. If you are Legion M member, you get priority as far as being cast as an extra, and there's a couple different opportunities there. It's actually filming right now, so I don't know if that opportunity is still available, but we're doing the set visits with him. And as the movie comes out, it's slated to come out later this fall. And it's in production right now. They're shooting it in New Orleans, and yeah, when it's done, we're going to blow that out. And we've got some really exciting things that I can't talk about yet, but a really interesting and cool release strategy. So if you're a Jay and Silent Bob fan, if you're a Kevin Smith fan, if you're a fan of the View Askew universe, you know, and Clerks and Mallrats and that whole thing, we definitely encourage you to come out. And, you know, for all of the projects that I talked about, Girl with No Name, Field Guide to Evil, like I said, we've got another really cool project that we're probably going to be announcing, I don't know when, within the next couple of weeks, for probably the biggest movie that we've been involved in yet, and something that's going to be coming out this summer. But you can just go to legionm.com. You can sign up. I mentioned, you know, we're a fan-owned company, you know, so the whole idea is that we're trying to get 1 million investors in the company. You can invest right now. We don't have a round open. Everything we do is regulated by the SEC. So, you know, there's only certain times that we can raise money and certain amounts. And, you know, we've got to do audited financial statements that we post publicly. And so there's a lot of kind of like work that we have to do to be able to show that we're buttoned up and show where every penny of the money is going and all that sort of stuff. But aside from investing, you don't have to invest to be a part of Legion M. You can join for free. You can join today. Just go to legionm.com. You can join Legion M. And when you become a member, a free member of Legion M, there's no cost, there's no obligation. It just gets you in the loop. And, you know, we let you know when all of these things are happening. And you can come out and you can see for yourself what it's all about. We've got a members only Facebook group that you can join, you know, to be a part of the community and help us change the world.
Mr. Jeff Anison, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a fantastic discussion. Thank you to Gene for setting this up. Thanks for everyone who listens and on YouTube, SoundCloud, Patreon, etc. Jeff, last thing, any social medias where people should find you and everything you do at Legion M?
Yeah, so Legion M Official, at Legion M Official. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, I believe, as well. Those are kind of the 4 channels. And like I said, if you join Legion M and you join the members only Facebook group, you'll see Paul and myself and all the other executives of Legion M, you know, chatting there and interacting when we get a chance. And so that's the best place to follow us and be a part of it all.
Nice.
Again, thank you very much. Gene, plugs for you.
Yeah, just find me on Twitter, Instagram, Gene9892.
And you can find me at twitter.com/DEWGO Waffles. Check out the Waffle Press again on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Patreon. Links to everything else we do on our Twitters, etc. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We have been professionally unprofessional.
I love it.